Well, greetings everyone. David Arendale here, and I just want to take a couple of minutes about some lessons I've learned of additional ways in order to be able to share my scholarship with other people. And also I added in this other term down here at the bottom, digital professional identity. And I'll let us take a look at that as we go through. The traditional way that educators have shared their information has been through publishing in a formal journal. Generally, these have an external board of review. Generally, most of these journals historically have been ones that you had to subscribe to or be able to get to the articles through interlibrary loan. The other way is to be able to do presentations at conferences and other kinds of venues. But the heart of all scholarship is the scholarship. If we don't have anything here in the middle, then we really don't have anything really of importance to share with other people. Well, I've taken those two initial elements of publishing and speaking, and also in recent years have added a website, because I know that's another way that you're able to share your scholarship. Sure, your publications are going to appear in Google searches and other search engines and such, but also I wanted to have a little more control, and that's the reason why about 10 years ago or so I set up my own website. It's at arendale.org, and it gives me another place for me to be able to share informal things that are in progress, along with links in order to be able to read my publications. A book that really influenced me a great deal here was by Linder. It came out in 2018, and it really helped me to sharpen more of my focus of alternative ways for me to be able to share my scholarship with others. And that's the reason why we now have an additional model here with additional places. It still is the heart is your scholarship. If you don't have ideas, if you don't have research and evaluation to go behind them, well, then you don't have a story to share. But in addition to publishing and speaking and having a website, I've also added 3 more elements here in order to help me to be able to get my scholarship out into the hands of others, not only inside here of the United States, but around the world. As I said, traditional publications has really been the heart of scholarship, but things have really opened up. We oftentimes thought about books, traditional journal articles. Generally they're kind of locked up. They're either you have to pay for individual articles, or you have to get a subscription to the journal, or perhaps the journal is tied into a membership, a professional organization, and that's going to require fees. Well, the hottest thing really in about the last 10 years or so has been what we call open source journal articles. And that means that anybody can read these. They're available online. It used to be 10 years ago that open source journals were really looked down upon by some places. I came from the University of Minnesota. In order for me to be promoted from an assistant professor up to an associate, the expectation was I needed to be up here in the books and in the traditional articles, and even of that, looking very particularly on what kinds of journals I was publishing in. Well, nowadays, open source journals are widely accepted. In fact, it's one of the best places in order to get information because you're able to get it there fast. At the time that I'm writing or creating this video, it's March of 2020, and we're in the midst of the flu pandemic. And open source journals are absolutely critical because that's where good quality material and research studies are being published, and they're immediately available for people around the world, for scientists to be able to use on working on both medications in order to help people who have the disease, as well as the development of vaccines in order to prevent it to begin with. There's other places to be able to publish as well. Ebooks have become more popular, audiobooks, and then also simply some of the citation services that are out there that list where your articles are at. But I would say probably for most scholars, they're probably up here in this top one half portion up here. But I think that there's some things to take a look at. I eventually hope to get into ebooks and audiobooks, but that's going to be a couple years from now. Well, you continue to do the speaking, and I think one of the hottest things that's really become much more popular has been webinars in order to be able to reach out. And as I said, this is March 2020, conferences are being called off, conferences are being moved to an online basis. So the whole idea about webinars is enabling us to not have to get inside of airplanes or inside of cars and spend days traveling, staying in hotels. We're able to get our information, and particularly if the webinars are recorded, that means that they're going to be available on demand. And you're able to listen to them whenever you want to then. So I continue to do public speaking, but I do probably more now online speaking than I do actually at the conferences. Another area that's really grown a great deal are what we call online depositories. They're places to where you can place a publication so that other people who maybe don't subscribe to articles to journals, or you want to be able to share an early draft version of your publication in order to receive feedback from your colleagues before you go and formally submit it to a journal. As I said, I have my own personal website where I make available things. My university has something that's called the Digital Conservancy. And the thing that's really great about it is that the Digital Conservancy becomes an extension of the library. Rather than sending articles and publications and research studies through interlibrary loan, which pretty much had been shifted over to PDF documents anyway, well, now this becomes a place to where you can store your articles, audio, and video. And for me, I've placed all of my materials up inside of this depository. I've been amazed at the number of people in the past 18 months who have downloaded my publications. And what makes me feel good is that I've made my material more available. I'm still in the journals. I'm still doing the public speaking, but I've added on. There's also some additional services, and I want to keep this video relatively short, so I'm not going to go in and describe them all for you. But all of my material is available through academic.edu, also down here at ResearchGate, and you see some of the other ones down here as well. So once again, the idea is that we're making our material more available. Are we trying to do something bad for the journals? Not at all. We're just simply making material more available in more places. Because what I've discovered is that people access information in their own particular ways. They have their own places that they like to go to. And if we don't have our material in a variety of places, they're going to overlook our material, and we're not going to have an opportunity to have an influence. As I said already, I have my own personal website. I happen to use a company called Squarespace in order to run that one. I also have another website that I run on best practices for TRIO programs. One of the other places that is particularly important is my page that is at my university. I'm at University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, and I find that it ranks very high whenever people do searches for me if they want to learn more about me. So having my institutional web page is very important, and I can have links on it to some of my publicly accessible material. I also have my own personal website, which I do through Squarespace then. And then also, if you kind of think about it, all of the social media sites, podcasting, YouTube, and all the rest, in a sense, they're kind of a website too. So there's a variety of ways because there's all kinds of search engines, whether it's going to be Google or whether it's going to be Bing or any of the other ones that are out there. And we simply want to have our material so it's accessible in a variety of places. Something that's particularly important, and I was just visiting with a colleague this morning on it, is that whenever you have the opportunity, make sure that you have a place to add keywords, or sometimes they end up calling them tags, of what is it that your material relates to. I have a lot of things about peer-assisted learning programs. That's a big area for me. I always find a place to where not only do you see those keywords appear inside of your text, but also oftentimes these websites, and we'll see this particularly coming up here in a moment whenever we look at social media sites, they have a place for you to be able to put these keywords in. And I have found from my own experience on how more accessible my material is whenever I put these keywords and tags in. It helps the search engines in order to find you. We have all probably heard of something called bots. It's kind of short for the robots. They're the little crawlers. In fact, sometimes that's what they're called, the search engines, whether it be Google, Bing, or all the other ones that are out there. They crawl through the internet and they look at all the web pages. And I forget what the total number of web pages are at this point, whether it's up to 50 billion or maybe it's more than that. Well, about every 10 days, these little robots from Google and Bing and the rest, they crawl through all billions of those websites. And it enables them, they notice these keywords and tags. They look at the titles. They look at the descriptions about your publications, and they keep note of that. And then somebody comes by and they go to the search box and they type in a keyword. And then that enables these search engines in order to quickly find your material, because how are we going to differentiate your particular article with the billions upon billions of other websites and other publications they could take a look at? So once again, it's another way to make it easier for other people to find your material. As I talked about social media, and you can see the examples here, I use Facebook, LinkedIn, podcasts, Twitter feeds, YouTube channels. I haven't gotten into live streaming. I have no idea what to do with Instagram at this point. I could put pictures of my cat up there, but I don't think that's very important. But some scholars might end up using photographs of some of their research studies, what they're looking at, what they're examining. Maybe it's physical phenomena. With the right kinds of permissions, it'll be images of the people who they were doing research with and for. So there's all kinds of ways that social media can be extremely important in order to be able to reach other people. I'm not saying that that is something that I would spend all my energy on, because when it comes right back down to it again with my little diagram, in the heart of all of this is our scholarship. And if there's nothing in the middle, then there's no stories to be sharing on these other sources. In fact, I'll be working on some other videos to show other people how to be able to do what I do. It's possible to put your information in a 1 or 2 or 3 places and then have it appear automatically in all of these other places. And that's the reason why I'd recommend you'll see an image of that book again that I talked about earlier by Linder. I also share the availability of draft documents as well as new work that I've come out with. I share them on email listservs. They're kind of old-fashioned, but I still find that some of these are really important. These are important to me in my area of working on peer-assisted learning. So for me, I find ways to share the availability of information on one or more of these sites up here. And I'm really kind of strategic about how I select, when do I send these messages out, how do I craft the message, how do I place a link inside of it in order to make things available to people on a quarterly or on an annual basis. And the reaction I get from people is that they appreciate that. It's another way for them to be able to access information. I'm reaching out to them through the emails. Now, it's a very inefficient system. I don't know about you, but I don't carefully read everything that's in all of the email listserv messages I get. I oftentimes end up using a function which is called digest, which squeezes down all of the individual email messages that might be coming from one of these listservs, and I only get one packet per day. Because it can get pretty overwhelming whenever you subscribe to a number of listservs. So I'm probably only seeing half of the titles of the messages that are going out. But at least I'm making my material accessible, and I'll end up doing this on a periodic basis. You're really careful whenever you end up doing email listserv messages. You can look really self-serving, you can look bothersome, overly commercial. All I want to do is to make my material available. Everything that I have, I give away. Some scholars end up charging fees for material, and they do that for lots of logical reasons to help support their research or their research assistants and all the rest. So I don't dispute any of that. It's just that my particular way of approaching this is that it's free material. And once again, I'm trying to make life easier for people out there who have a common interest in my material. How do you go through and sort through 10 million web pages, 10 billion web pages? Well, sometimes you have people who curate or identify resources that could be of high interest. Right now, there's a lot of sharing going on the listservs on, once again, it's March 2020. Most colleges in America have now gone online. And for some colleges, it was done with 3 days' notice for logical, reasonable reasons. So people are suddenly trying to find out how to do online education. And you see lots of messages and lots of sharing going on the listservs. It's really quite heartening to see the way people are opening up the things that they know. They're organizing free webinars. They're giving away training manuals. And we're helping one another in the middle of a crisis. And we haven't got time to do a careful, methodical research that might take a month to find materials, because for some schools, like at mine, it was 3 days' notice. You are to shift to online delivery of your class, however that works. And then they identified and created a couple websites of resources, and people went from there. So that's another source on how to be able to get your material out. This has been a really brief overview. I guess in some ways what I'm really hoping is that you'll buy the book, which, by the way, I have no financial interest in. I don't know the author. I just simply know how valuable it has been. The reason why I think it's important to have this constellation of ways to share our scholarship is that people access the internet in different ways. And this just simply makes our material more accessible. And I can tell that because I get more messages, I see more citations of my work since I've gone to this kind of a constellation. And it's not about me. It's about getting the information out, because for the most part, I'm sharing the collective knowledge and wisdom from other people. And I find it a wonderful time being able to get this good information out, because I get positive feedback from people. It really comes down to scholarship. If we don't have scholarship, then there's really no reason to do anything else. It's really the heart of what we do. So I recommend that you get Professor Linder's book. It is methodical in how she thinks out in much more detail than these 6 elements of the constellation that I have. She leads you through. It's built in a workbook-like fashion, and I think that you could find this enormously helpful. So as I said, consider picking up her book. There's not a lot of them that are out there like this, because frankly, I've been looking for some time. Well, let's keep up the conversation. I have a lot to learn in this area, and I'd love to hear what are the different ways that you are sharing your scholarship beyond public speaking at conferences or through webinars, and through the written word. Well, best wishes as you continue your good work of sharing your good scholarship with more people, and I look forward to reading it. Take good care, everyone.